If they don't say pen tester, I hire them immediately.
Yeah.
We're the detectives of the network, right?
Welcome to the Hashtime Show, your weekly review of cybersecurity news and info. This is episode number 2. On today's show, Dave, Chris, and Jeff talk about the current cybersecurity job market and how cyber detectives take a bite out of crime. Check us out online at hashtimeshow.com. And now, on to the show.
All right, guys, welcome back to the show. Jeff, Dave, we've made it. We're on episode 2.
We sure are.
We're doing this thing.
Feels good.
So, guys, welcome back to our show. This is our weekly podcast, and it's our podcast where we chat about the weekly cyber and InfoSec news. And we're going to kick off today's show with a little segment we like to call Getting to Know You. And this week we're going to talk to we're going to talk to ourselves here. We're going to speak amongst ourselves about why we got into cyber. So Jeff, I'll start with you. What got you into cybersecurity initially?
Really for me, it's I've always been interested in security and cybersecurity. Started in IT a long time ago when I was really young, and really what got me into IT was more of the, it's going to date me a little bit, but the BBSs and the attacks and things that were happening back then. So just kind of always been interesting to me. Been in IT a long time, and just kind of a natural progression for me. Just more out of curiosity and that whole unknown part of security.
What keeps you engaged with it nowadays?
It changes so much every day. It's never the same thing. So, I can honestly say in the last, 6-7 years, I don't think I've had a day of rest. It's just continuous, but it's always different. So it's easy to be engaged when nothing is ever the same.
Sure. Makes sense. Dave, what about you? I know you started out in the military, but what got you into the commercial side of things, I guess?
Yeah, well, I exited the Air Force. I went into the reserve and obviously needed to find a full-time job. So
this or McDonald's?
It was this. Well, yeah, I did work for McDonald's for 5 years prior, and I thought about going back, but no. They offered me a position at the Army. It was called DCOD, but it was basically the incident response for all of the CONUS Army installations. And it was just kind of a first line analysis incident handler position. And I just took that and ran with it. And it was a giant leap out of active duty, which makes a lot of people nervous. So I kind of just took the first thing I could get. And it just so happened to be that it was an excellent position for me to learn and really see security from the right perspective. Because before I'd worked for a base communication squadron, and that was definitely an experience at the site level, but you never really had a broad perspective. And working for the Army really gave me that broad understanding of security, especially on a technical level. So I really immersed myself and on many late nights just staring at packets and understanding what I would eventually go on to use here at Data Shield. And that was mainly detection. Detection has always been my specialty. I love writing rules and looking at packets. And I think that's the interesting thing for me is, when I'm not doing directorial stuff as I am nowadays, I do still love to get into the detection side and write a rule that will find something accurately with no false positives. There is definitely an art to it. It's something that I try to instill in all my analysts and content engineers, really writing the perfect rule. And, maybe it doesn't fire for 2 or 3 months and everybody thinks it's broken and what value does it serve? And then one day it finds that thing that you were looking for perfectly. I think that's, for me personally, one of the most rewarding things about security. So I'd say that's what keeps me going.
Well, and Dave, I've only known you a short period of time, but you strike me as the kind of guy who, you like to be challenged at the high level that way, like intellectually, right? Like that used to be the kind of guy, if you weren't here, you might be a gray hat guy out there hacking to see if you could. I don't know if that's...
I definitely favor the blue team. I think it's an underrated side of security. Everybody wants to be a hacker, but...
we'll do a segment on that because that is a pet peeve of ours.
That's a whole episode in and of itself. But no, I love blue team. I think it's... like I said, it's underrated and maybe a little forgotten as time goes on with so much focus on, everybody thinks they're a hacker. You ask people even here, well, what do you do? And the easiest thing to explain is, well, I kind of hack and look at other hackers. So it's just, I prefer blue team, definitely.
I do that kind of facetiously with you just because later on in the show, I want to chat about the hacker profile.
Oh, right. Okay.
And so, I'm just kind of curious. I've always been a gray guy myself, and you totally strike me as a blue guy. So I wanted to see how you take that. But I guess for me, and Dave, I appreciate you humoring me. I guess for me, I never even thought about cybersecurity. I'm new to the company. I've been doing marketing forever. And DJ, one of our colleagues, for the listeners out there who runs sales here for North America, he came to me and he said, work at Data Shield because cyber is such a growing industry, right? And I sort of step back and I go, yeah, you're right. Like there's a lot of burgeoning technologies right now. You got self-driving cars, you have a lot of, Bitcoin, whatever you want to call it, or whatever you want to look at that's kind of new in the space. But the landscape for those industries is kind of uncertain, right? We don't know if it's going to be up or down, or the volatility is unknown. But I just don't see cybersecurity from an industry standpoint really going away. I see the need for it only increasing.
Yeah, it's kind of quite a while ago, some of us may be familiar with it, but, being a defense contractor was a big thing. Everybody wanted to be involved in, developing weapons or, military things. And now cybersecurity is everywhere. I mean, I think eventually it will be integrated into everything everyone does. But, as of now, it's continually growing. So
I think for me, and what you're saying is totally true. For me, it was like, if I'm going to get involved in an industry, it seems like the right one to be in. So anyways, enough about me. Let the experts talk more about cyber. All right, guys, so let's pop in. So let's talk about news of the week. So I want to ask you guys that, and I wanted to talk about it because an article popped up on my radar. Cybersecurity programs mushroom on Minnesota college campuses. And so the quote I'll read here is, amid a steady drumbeat of headlines about major data breaches, Minnesota campuses are rushing to train professionals who will guard against cyber attacks in coming years. And so I'm guessing this is happening not just in Minnesota, it's probably happening all over the country.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it's right down the road.
Yeah, in fact, ASU, right here near and dear to our hearts, is a very large university that has done a great job of building a cyber program and starting to train professionals. We have some smaller colleges here doing the same thing. If you look at the industry statistics, there are so many unfilled cybersecurity jobs right now, and most of it is just because people aren't trained well enough and people have high expectations. So as you go more and more, it'll be scattered through more and more top campuses. And again, I have a big driver in this myself, where I think we need to start even at that younger level and start with high school programs. But, I think education is the key right now, educating people more and more.
Right. I mean, the market, we have a negative unemployment rate, right? Because there's more roles than there are people to fill it, right?
Yeah.
And so I've heard here, I mean, maybe Dave, you can speak to this. I've heard that we have one of the better retention rates, right? I know it sounds like an infomercial all of a sudden, but I've heard that it's one of our core strengths, right? Like being able to retain people, because it's tough. Like the market's so lucrative right now if you're an analyst,
Yeah, it's definitely a challenge to find the right people, but we definitely hire for culture. That's a big part of how we pick analysts and really any position. And I think for a long time, it's been kind of a wide open field that basically anybody could get into cyber if they were interested and had the aptitude and started studying and going down that route. But I think a lot of education programs have kind of corrected in a way that they saw the opportunity and they realized that a lot of employers weren't able to find the people that they were looking for. So that's why you see all these programs springing up. So.
Yeah, I mean, personally, I'm a big culture person. You can find the right people, intelligent people who have the ability to think articulately and learn and think outside the box. You could train anybody into cybersecurity. We take that approach. We hire very good, seasoned, security people from 3-letter agencies and from, Fortune 500 companies. And then, we have some lower level people that we train up, you have to be willing, otherwise they'll never get there.
Sure.
Yeah. It could be that some days or, just because of various forces within the market that you're not able to find the person that you're looking for. And it is a reality of security. Sometimes you do take chances on people, and you give them a chance, and if you have the right environment and they have the right amount of drive, then usually they'll succeed.
What would be a tip to a young person on the same topic line, someone who's thinking about going into cybersecurity, or someone who's thinking about taking, majoring in that, right, or taking a graduate level in that? Like, what would be kind of a quick tip for them? What should they look for first? Is there certain certifications that they should be looking for, that kind of thing, Jeff? Like, what? You hire a lot of people. Like, what do you look for when you see these guys right out of college? What guys and girls right out of college? What are you looking for on the resume, I guess?
That's the thing. When they're right out of college, we have a perfect individual. Went to ASU through the program, didn't have any certifications, but the way you interview these people have to be different, right? You have to interview understanding that they can get there, but they're not there yet, and you have to build both an internal and an external training program for them, right? You got to send them to some training. You got to have internal trainings. You got to give them the knowledge. We do a lot of ride-alongs with our L1 analysts, with L2 analysts, to try to get them, up to speed on specific things. But, I think it's be different, stand out, show, resumes. I've looked at so many resumes. You start to go numb of looking at resumes. But, for me, it's really, make sure the detail's there. When you write your resume, read it over and over again, make sure it reads well, make sure it has the right articulation of your abilities outside of just technical. And, for heaven's sake, everybody use spell check.
I'm guilty of that as well. So you're saying, I guess to sum up, details in the resume stand out in the interview.
Yeah, absolutely.
Okay, cool. Perfect. Dave, do you have anything to add on that?
No packets. Study packets, because we give everybody a packet test. Packet analysis is the lifeblood, I think, of security in a lot of ways. It's literally how information travels over the network, and the more you look at packets, the more you'll understand what programs or what applications send them and why and how. So I think if you know that, you will stand out considerably.
I think network security is kind of missing in a lot of these programs. They're teaching ethical hacking skills. They're teaching maybe policy and procedure. They're not teaching true networking, which that makes every IT job better. Not just cybersecurity. It makes, help desk. The more network knowledge you have, the more you understand the fundamentals of how things work and why they work that way.
Yeah. If all you did was open up Wireshark on your desktop and just started looking at packets and took every request step by step, you would know more than a lot of people who are supposedly in security. So
probably to be honest on your resume, right? Because
honesty is important.
That would be my tip, even though I don't hire any analysts. That'd be my tip, because different industry, but I remember I did supply chain in school when I went to work and I was interviewing, leaving. And I was really good with Excel. I still am okay at Excel. But when you're an analyst, you have to be really good at pivot tables and crunching data, running formulas and stuff. And I remember they were doing mass interviews on campus at ASU. And one of I think it was Ferguson or the companies, was like having, how do you know to use pivot tables? They'd ask the people, and people were lying, and the interviewer would turn their laptop on and go, okay, show me how, right there on the spot. So
interviewing's tricky. I mean, everybody makes mistakes with hiring people. I mean, we've hired people that have supposed 20 years of experience, and then they can't type on their keyboard. I mean, it happens.
Sure.
I think developing the right interview strategies, understanding their thought process and how they work through problem solving, and, it goes a long way in understanding whether they can truly do it. But yeah, people, don't lie on your resume, please.
Yeah. You will get found out somewhere or the other, right?
Yeah.
Well, cool. Okay. Shifting gears, guys, into the next headline here. New phishing campaign from the FBI director, Wray. And so this one, I had to put this one on here because because I get phishing emails all the time, right? And
I prefer the ones from the prince in Nigeria that's going to wire me a ton of money. But
let me read a couple of quotes from this. My favorite is, it's from the email address it's spoofed from is official FBI director at USA.com.
That sounds legit.
It's probably USA Network. They probably own that domain. And then this was my favorite line from there. We, the Federal Bureau of Investigation, through our intelligence monitoring network, have discovered that the transaction that the bank contacted you previously for was legal. That's a good one. That one, and then hold on, I got to read more. Sorry, this cracks me up. So the other one that came through. Hold on, let me get here. This is a good podcast. We'll edit this out in post. He says the FBI, not going to edit it. Just kidding. This will be in the podcast. He goes, the FBI is seeking to wiretap internet. So that's a bit, as the article wrote, that's a big wiretap.
You know,
that's probably real though, right?
Yeah, they're probably really doing that. You know, we look at millions of phishing emails a year, and you know, between all the customers that we have, tool sets, internal, I mean, these things just get sillier and sillier. You know, the thing is though that people fall for them. I mean, it's legitimate. We have people who come to us. We have current customers. They get hit with these things. Sometimes they get through all the defense they have, and you know, people click them. You know, or people send money, or people, you know, download the file, or you know, I remember when I was younger, I had one that they sent a spoofed email from me to my parents, and telling them that I was overseas and had no way, and they wanted to send money, and luckily they got a hold of me. I think my stepmom probably would have wired the money to them. Mm-hmm. So it happens.
Yeah, I mean, the last time I heard from the FBI director, he just picked up the phone and called me.
Well, the reason I wanted to talk about this today, so obviously this one was poorly written, right? And it's probably didn't work that well. It was in the news, but I wanted to really talk about it because, you know, I've seen some. I almost got caught on one back when I was renting out a condo. I had one that was really extensive. I want to rent your condo out. It was really well written, good English. And then we got to the end, and she was sending photos of herself. Man, that was like, you know, I was a young guy, so I kind of fell for it, you know. But then that was the first flag that should have been for me. Why is this girl sending me photos? Why is she so attractive? And then it didn't seem, you know, I should have maybe thought first. And then it got to the end, and there was I need you to send me money before I can give you rent, right? It was and then my red flag went off. Like, okay, this is a phishing scam.
You're like, oh my God, I spent a year of my life getting catfish.
Yeah, I got catfish hard. Yeah, I mean catfish, right? And these I've heard of the parents ransom ones. I've heard that a million times. So, like from a cyber standpoint, they obviously work, right, and a lot of them are well written. So
user education is key. I mean, end users are now and will always be the number one problem, right? From an organization standpoint, and without good training, good teaching lessons, and you got to do it in the right way. You know, the right policies, procedures, security awareness training, practice your phishing exercises. You know,
I think one of the things that always helps me is, and this is going back to even when I was doing analyst work full time, just take a giant step back and look at the contents of the email. And one I'll never forget, it was a company was in heavy industry, and they received an email from another foreign company that was also in heavy industry, but the sender of the email supposedly was like the CEO, and this was like a gigantic state-owned corporation in another country, and they sent it to us asking if it was malicious. And I just had to take a giant step back and put myself in their situation and thought, would this low-level person at this company receive an email from the CEO of a gigantic foreign multinational corporation and expect to get that? So, I mean, that's my advice to people who get phishing emails, or you get something that's unusual. Open Microsoft Word or whatever you choose to write it down in. Type out this thing that you think you received and just look at it and imagine if it's real. And chances are,
it sounds like a lot of work, Dave.
You know,
copy pasted it, and then
whatever tactic works for you. But I think if people just wrote it down, like, and imagined if that were actually happening, I think they would see that maybe it's.
I still go with the tried and true. The majority of these are too good to be true. There's still the very tricky thing that are business oriented that get passed or get tricked. You know, again, I'm big on education. I think education's a big key portion of this, especially anybody who touches sensitive data, touches money, touches, you know, admins for executives. I was at an organization where the admin actually did something with the executives with an email that came in and, you know, compromised his account because, you know, she wasn't trained well.
Well, so I got a couple points here. So Dave, 100% you're right. And that the thing is a lot of people, they get in fire drill mode, right? They get email, this is from the CEO and they got to run. So I 100% agree with you. And to your point, Jeff, we've seen that even today. We've seen it was the CEO's wife who got compromised, right? We've definitely seen that. So let me ask you, I have two questions for you guys. So on this, because this is Educate Chris segment here. So number one, we have the tools, the email tools that are out there, the security tools, the Mimecast, the proof points, the 365 has some stuff built in as well. How much of the heavy lifting are they do? Obviously the user has to be, that's where the failure mode always is, right? Yeah. But how much, let's do a quick kind of talk about that. Cause I really want to, how much of the lifting do those do? I've seen the infographics, I've seen some of the stats, but when it comes down to phishing email coming down the pipe, is Mimecast, Proofpoint, these guys, are they doing what they say they do? Yeah, I mean, they're doing a good job. Again, this is kind of like, I equate this to cloud security, right? Everybody's afraid of the cloud because of all these cloud breaches. Well, the cloud breaches are occurring because people aren't doing their due diligence to secure their cloud, right? So anything that you put somewhere or configure, you got to put security into it. So I think Mimecast, Proofpoint, they do a fantastic job of getting all the low-level basic stuff, impersonation, having good threat intelligence in there. The part that they won't fix is the stuff that does get through. You still got to educate the users. That's a big key for me. But I think, if you look at, your email server, if you just have an Exchange server up, adding any email gateway is better than none. But, some of these guys spend a pretty hefty amount of money making the products hopefully as dummy proof as possible for your end users. Sure. So when you say train the users too, and I'm just curious, does that have to always be internal? Do you hire an outside firm to do that? Like what's the most effective way in your opinion? From your experience? You can do it internal if you've got the staff to do it. If not, you can outsource phishing, the education, the testing, the, phishing simulations, the reporting, that can all be outsourced. If you don't have the staff to do it. So I'll ask both of you guys this, how, phishing email, it pops before I started working here. I was like, yeah, whatever, there's phishing emails. I didn't even really realize till I started working here how much this impacts business every single day. Is it in the top 5 of where the entry point happens at? I can tell you across our customer base, 60% of all actual infections, breaches, whatever you want to call that we investigate are phishing related. Really?
Yeah, it's just easily the best way to attack an organization, and it's also from a difficulty standpoint, it's probably the easiest because you don't have to attack some kind of web application or some kind of database. Really, all you need to do is send an email, and you could even use your own email client. It's just a matter of crafting the message in a way that elicits the right kind of response out of the target. And in a lot of ways, you don't even need an email to do it. You can pick up the phone. If you are able to call the right person and sound like the right kind of, confident and present yourself as someone who they're either expecting to hear from or think they might expect to hear from, or get the right kind of emotional response, then, it can be done. So
interesting. Almost like the PBX hacking that I've been learning about recently. There's more than one way to skin a cat.
Yeah, I mean, way back in the day, it was very easy to con and convince people to phone. I think that's getting less and less often, but it still happens. We'll have to do a segment sometime on that. Ben Johnson, who's our chief security officer, he's got some very good stories about social engineering and getting into buildings that you're not supposed to.
That's right. I'm trying to rope him in here, but he seems, whenever he sees me, he avoids me. He runs the other direction. I might take my hair out of my bun and let him know I'm a long hair guy with it. You know what I mean?
It might help.
All right, cool. I think we I want to talk about phishing again in later episodes, but I think we kind of talked about that part for now for today's show. So let's jump. This one has popped across my radar. I know Jeffy sent this over to me. The Docker breach, right? So let me do a quick little read off on this. Docker has asked 190,000 developer users to change their account passwords after hackers gained access to a database containing personal data. According to the advisory on the company's website, the incident happened on April 25th, when for a brief period, attackers access a single Docker Hub repository used to store the accounts. So basically they got everyone's information, and this exposes a lack of two-factor auth that's going on in the organization. So tell me a little bit more about that.
Yeah, we talked about that a little bit last week, but I think two-factor, if a site doesn't support two-factor, they're behind the times. Docker Hub's always been kind of a sketchy, iffy thing in the first place. I mean, Docker is fantastic. It's, I really believe in Docker. I run a lot of Docker stuff at home and, for different projects and things. And, it's a great platform, but, basic hygiene when it comes to, portals and access, two-factor should be part of that. Whether SMS, text, and email is a great form of two-factor or not, it's still better than nothing.
Right.
I think the scary thing is how many people are going to see this. I mean, obviously, this is in the security community. It's going to reach a wide variety of users and people who hopefully read this, but inevitably there will be someone who doesn't see it. And if you consider it's just 190,000 different users, presumably who are developers, that's an enormous attack surface of companies who might now be affected. So I think there are a lot of implications for this. It sounds to me like a supply chain attack in the making.
Yeah, I think it's interesting too, because open source is always one of those areas. I mean, open source adoption has been better and better and better over the years. When you've got a tool like Docker, who now is across every cloud platform, it's across every SOAR and automation initiative. Everybody's using Docker. Recently they had an API issue too. I know that they ended up patching, but open source, when you're relying on open source as a company, you gotta ensure that you're tracking and keeping track of these things, and where you're putting your information and your data.
Just back to the hygiene thing, right?
Yep.
Always have to make sure that you're clean, or at least clean as possible, right?
Yep.
All right, cool. All right, so the last part, guys, this is sort of this headline came out this week from readwrite.com. They were doing a profile on hackers, they call it the good, the bad, and the ugly personas. And I sort of wanted to chat about this a little bit. We were joking about the top of the show, Dave, about everyone thinks they're a hacker, right? But I wanted to break it down, and I think a lot of people that hear this already might know this, but I wanted to kind of break down the different hacker categories based on this article, and sort of get your guys' feedback and, tell me where you would be. I know you're already a blue guy, Dave. We know that. So and it's funny too, this terminology gets used in marketing too, right? I've been using this white hat, black hat, gray hat for years. It gets used across the board. So again, they call the hat hackers, where you have your white hats, right? These are your good guys. They're hired to protect an organization, and they look for breaches and vulnerabilities in the process. So are you guys technically hear white hat hackers then, I guess, because you work for an organization?
It's
I'm going to say no.
There's different, this kind of goes to the team mentality, right? You got the blue team, the red team, and now they've added the purple team in there. Labels are labels, I guess. It's good versus evil, like any good story. So.
I think it goes back to people not wanting to be on the defense.
Right.
People want to feel like they're on the hunt for something, and it makes blue team a bad word.
I have a great blog article. Maybe I'll have you throw it up there. But I think today's world, and everybody sees the word hacker. Yeah. And all they envision is like the CSI, and different TV shows where these people are pounding on keyboards and things are flying across the screen, and they're enhancing video images of people's license plates 7,000 feet away. Do
you guys remember the 90s movie Hackers?
Yeah. Yes.
Oh my God. My buddy I was telling you about, Alan, we used to laugh because I was in basic CSC class and he was already way advanced for me, but we'd watch like movies like Swordfish, and we'd be like, "That's not a command."
That's a great movie,
right? He's like, "Look, he'd be showing him hacking. It's like that's not a command that exists in any language. Like, it's just random stuff on a DOS screen. That's what that's what the whole hacker. That's what the Hollywood version of hacking is, right?
Yeah,
that's hilarious. Okay, so the other next category they had is the blue hackers, right? That hired to test software. look for bugs that could create vulnerabilities.
This was always just called QA to me.
Yeah, I was confused.
But now
too.
it's blue hat hacking.
I actually have never seen them put blue hat on something. Usually they say white, gray, or black.
Yeah.
You know,
Same. Yeah, what is that? Is that just trying to be sexy? Is that what that is?
I think it's, you know, everybody wants more labels to things, so I think they're just trying to expand the label set.
Like every genre.
I think they want to feel better about themselves.
So then gray, challenging their own abilities without ill intent, right? But that's a gray area.
You know, I mean, you got the security researchers out there who, you know, port scan and do various things on random people and stuff. I mean, that's kind of, again, that's why they call it gray hat, that kind of gray area. You know, I guess you could say everybody in here is white hat hackers because, you know, based off these labels, but, you know, I mean, you know, it's kind of a pet peeve of mine. You know, every time Dave and I interview people, you know, the first thing that you usually hear when you say, hey, where do you want your career to go? Where do you want to be? I'd say 99% of the time they say pen tester. If they don't say pen tester, I hire them immediately.
Yeah. The one guy I can remember that said that we hired.
Yeah.
I think pretty much on
you
most
know,
grounds.
it's great to be a pen tester. Don't get me wrong. Fantastic skills. It's needed. We need to test and test and test and, you know, find things. But, you know, we kind of call ourselves, we're the detectives of the network, right? So we're really going to, you know, different lengths than a white hat hacker to find the things that are occurring. You know, you still need both sides, which is why now there's the coined purple team, so that, you know, you got somebody who sits in the middle to help both sides.
Yeah, I have another set of thoughts on the purple team. But,
that's your new nickname, Jeff Marshall, cyber detective.
You know, hacktivist. That's an interesting one. You know, I worked at Koch Industries, and you know, that was their number one concern were hacktivists. You know, they had Anonymous shut them down for a while.
Right.
You know, people protesting outside, various different things like that. And hacktivism, that is a whole nother level.
Is that grayish then, or that's black, right?
You know, I guess in mentality it's grayish, but they're
causing damage.
Yeah, they're causing damage in a lot of cases.
Because that's the article kind of went white, blue, gray, black, and then because, you know, gray's weird too. Just not jump back, but I just wanted to add on to gray. You know, I've done gray marketing for a long time. You know, and what I found is it works in the short run, but it'll bite you in the long run, right? Yeah. And that's the mentality with the gray, I think. But yeah, the hacktivist. So let's jump back to that. So, you know, that's interesting. Koch, right? Because they're kind of considered the evil conglomerate, right? And Anonymous and all that. I mean, is that more and more prevalent nowadays? I mean, wasn't there just an article recently about Anonymous spinoff going after a foreign government? I mean, that happens regularly.
It's constant. When I was working for the Army, they were always concerned about that because, you know, a Twitter account for a various agency or individual might be hacked, and then you have all kinds of propaganda posted by whatever, you know, Middle Eastern group. Same thing with some of the assets at the time. They were just concerned about that being compromised and then being used to host those kinds of propaganda messages for whatever the organization wanted to promote. So it is a concern.
Would we consider like Russian troll farms to be the hacktivists or the black?
It depends on your point of view.
Point of view, right?
Depends if you're sitting in the Kremlin or not.
I like how the mainstream media, we're not going to go political, but just to stay down the line, the mainstream media considers, they always focus on the Russians trolls. And I'm like, isn't there like more Chinese troll farms that I've heard of as far as the studies?
So this is an interesting one to me because the two biggest targets you always hear about is China and Russia.
Right.
Now you're starting to you got some sprinkling of North Korea and Iran and stuff in there, right? Israel kind of plays the good and bad. But the reality is every government is after every government. So, you know, I've been in the situation where we actually had stuff come from a different government of a country who's supposedly a friendly country. And, you know, I think it's wider spread than people think. It's just there's that known focus on Russia and China for, you know, various different reasons.
If you don't think we're conducting our own cyber operations and that the Great Britain is doing their own cyber operations, and, you know, every other country is of course doing it against everybody else because that's what countries do.
I mean, the day, you know, there's jokes about it, movies about it, but, you know, it really is just as much cyber warfare as it is physical warfare now. So,
Interesting. So, all right, last thing on this, and then we can probably close it for today, guys. I want to know what are script kiddies. What on that? Do you guys read that in the article? What is that? They're graffiti artists for the cyber environment.
So
that's a way to put it.
I will say, I guess you could calculate a lot of people early in their career maybe were kind of messing with some of this stuff. I know I was as a young kid, but really the script kiddies are the people who just point predetermined things at things and hope it happens, right? And they're running other people's tools and scripts, and they're really just trying to take things down or
or do it for monetary gain.
Different monetary gain, right?
I watched a great short biography, and I, for the life of me, can't remember the name of it, but it was about a whole town. I think it was in either Croatia or Romania, and every single one of these people, it looked like completely normal people. It was a little farm town, and they were all running these malware campaigns because it was a lucrative thing, and it was keeping them afloat. It was actually providing them a decent lifestyle as opposed to becoming these subsistence farmers in an ex-Soviet country. So it's kind of a fascinating thing, the mindset that drives people to embrace these really prepackaged, off-the-shelf malware and exploit kits. So.
I mean, it's really as easy now as if you're some gang or crime syndicate and you want to get into cyber, you go to a website, put a stolen credit card number in there and download your pick and choose malware banking Trojan and start emailing it out to people. I mean, it's some of them you can even pay them to email it out to people, so it's when anytime there's monetary gain in something, you're going to have every type of person trying to get it.
Like the anarchist cookbook cyber version.
Yeah.
Well, that's cool. Well, guys, I think that's all the time we have for today's show. Thanks for joining us, and check back, subscribe, and we'll see you guys next week.
Thank you for listening to The Hashtime Show. Check us out online at hashtimeshow.com.